Volume 1, Chapter 3 of the Autobiography of Madame Guyon. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Autobiography of Madame Guyon by Jean Guyon, Volume 1, Chapter 3. My father loved me tenderly, and seeing how little my education was attended to, he sent me to a convent of the Ursulines. I was near 7 years old. In this house were two half-sisters of mine, the one by my father, the other by my mother. My father placed me under his daughter's care, a person of the great capacity and most exalted piety, excellently qualified for the instruction of youth. This was a singular dispensation of God's providence and love toward me, and proved the first means of my salvation. She loved me tenderly, and her affection made her discover in me many amiable qualities which the Lord had implanted in me. She endeavored to improve these good qualities, and I believe that had I continued in such careful hands, I should have acquired as many virtuous habits as I afterward contracted evil ones. This good sister employed her time in instructing me in piety and in such branches of learning as were suitable to my age and capacity. She had good talents and improved them well. She was frequent in prayer, and her faith was as great as that of most persons. She denied herself every other pleasure to be with me and to instruct me. Such was her affection for me that it made her find more pleasure with me than anywhere else. If I made her agreeable answers, though more from chance than from judgment, she thought herself well paid for all her labor. Under her care, I soon became mistress of most studies suitable for me. Many grown persons of rank could not have answered the questions. As my father often sent for me, desiring to see me at home, I found at one time the Queen of England there. I was near 8 years of age. My father told the Queen's confessor that if he wanted a little amusement, he might entertain himself with me. She tried me with several very difficult questions, to which I returned such pertinent answers that she carried me to the Queen and said, "Your Majesty must have some diversion with this child." She also tried me, and was so well pleased with my lively answers and my manners, that she demanded me of my father with no small importunity. She assured him that she would take particular care of me, designing me for maid of honor to the princess. My father resisted. Doubtless it was God who caused this refusal, and thereby turned off the stroke which might have probably intercepted my salvation. Being so weak, how could I have withstood the temptations and distractions of a court? I went back to the Ursulines, where my good sister continued her affection. But as She was not the mistress of the boarders, and I was obliged sometimes to go along with them. I contracted bad habits. I became addicted to lying, peevishness, and indevotion, passing whole days without thinking on God, who watched continually over me, as the sequel will manifest. I did not remain long under the power of such habits, because my sister's care recovered me. I loved much to hear of God, was not weary of church, loved to pray, had tenderness for the poor, and a natural dislike for persons whose doctrine was judged unsound. God has always continued to me this grace in my greatest infidelities. There was at the end of the garden, connected with this convent, a little chapel dedicated to the child Jesus. To this I betook myself for devotion, and for some time, carrying my breakfast thither every morning, I hid it all behind this image. I was so much a child that I thought I made a considerable sacrifice in depriving myself of it. Delicate in my choice of food, I wished to mortify myself, but found self-love still too prevalent to submit to such mortification. When they were cleaning out this chapel, they found behind the image what I had left there, and presently guessed that it was I. They had seen me every day going thither. I believe that God, who lets nothing pass without a recompense, soon reward me with interest for this little infantine devotion. I continued some time with my sister, where I retained the love and fear of God. My life was easy. I was educated agreeably with her. I improved much while I had my health, but very often I was sick and seized with maladies as sudden as they were uncommon. In the evening well, in the morning swell and full of bluish marks, symptoms of a fever which soon followed. At 9 years I was taken with so violent a hemorrhage that they thought I was going to die. I was rendered exceedingly weak. A little before this severe attack, my other sister became jealous, wanting to have me in turn. Though she led a good life, she had not a talent for the education of children. At first she caressed me, but all her caresses made no impression upon my heart. My other sister did more with a look than she with either caresses or threatenings. As she saw that I loved her not so well, she changed to rigorous treatment. She would not allow me to speak to my other sister when she knew I had spoken to her. She had me whipped or beat me herself. I could no longer hold out against severe usage, and therefore requited with apparent ingratitude all the favors of my parental sister, going no more to see her. But this did not hinder her from giving me marks of her usual goodness in the severe malady just mentioned. She kindly construed my ingratitude to be owing to my fear of chastisement rather than to a bad heart. Indeed, I believe this was the only instance in which fear of chastisement operated so powerfully upon me. From that time I suffered more in occasioning pain to the one I loved than in suffering myself at their hand. Thou knowest, O my beloved, that it was not the dread of thy chastisements that sank so deep, either into my understanding or my heart. It was the sorrow for offending thee, which ever constituted the whole of my distress, which was so great. I imagine if there were neither heaven nor hell, I should always have retained the same fear of displeasing thee. Thou knowest that after my faults, when in forgiving mercy thou wert pleased to visit my soul, thy caresses were a thousandfold more insupportable than thy rod. My father, being informed of all that passed, took me home again. I was nearly 10 years of age. I stayed only a little while at home. A nun of the order of Saint Dominic, of a great family, one of my father's intimate friends, solicited him to place me in her convent. She was the prioress and promised she would take care of me and make me lodge in her room. This lady had conceived a great affection for me. She was so taken up with her community in its many troublesome events that she was not at liberty to take much care of me. I had the chicken pox, which made me keep to my bed 3 weeks, in which I had very bad care, though my father and mother thought I was under excellent care. The ladies of the house had such a dread of the smallpox, as they imagined mine to be, that they would not come near me. I passed almost all the time without seeing anybody. A lay sister, who only brought me my allowance of diet at the set hours, immediately went off again. I providentially found a Bible, and having both a fondness for reading and a happy memory, I spent whole days in reading it from morning to night. I learned entirely the historical part, yet I was really very unhappy in this house. The other boarders, being large girls, distressed me with grievous persecutions. I was so much neglected as to food, and that I became quite emaciated. End of chapter 3, volume 1. Volume 1, chapter 4 of the autobiography of Madame Guyon. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The autobiography of Madame Guyon by Jean Guyon, Volume 1, Chapter 4. After about 8 months, my father took me home. My mother kept me more with her, beginning to have a higher regard for me than before. She still preferred my brother. Everyone spoke of it. Even when I was sick and there was anything I liked, he demanded. It was taken from me and given to him, and he was in perfectly good health. One day he made me mount the top of the coach, then threw me down. By the fall I was very much bruised. At other times he beat me. But whatever he did, however wrong it was winked at, or the most favorable construction was put upon it. This soured my temper. I had little disposition to do good, saying I was never the better for it. It was not then for Thee alone, O God, that I did good, since I ceased to do it when it met not with such a reception from others as I wanted. Had I known how to make a right use of this Thy crucifying conduct, I should have made a good progress. Far from turning me out of the way, it would have made me turn more wholly to Thee. I looked with jealous eyes on my brother, seeing the difference between him and me. Whatever he did was considered well, but if there were blame, it fell on me. My stepsisters by the mother gained her goodwill by caressing him and persecuting me. True, I was bad. I relapsed into my former faults of lying and peevishness. With all these faults, I was very tender and charitable to the poor. I prayed to God assiduously, loved to hear anyone speak of Him, and to read good books. I doubt not that you will be amazed at such a series of inconsistencies, but what succeeds will surprise you yet more, when you see this manner of acting gain ground with my years. As my reason ripened, it was so far from correcting this irrational conduct, sin grew more powerful in me. O my God, Thy grace seemed to be redoubled in proportion to the increase of my ingratitude. It was with me as with a city besieged. Thou didst surround my heart, and I only studied how to defend myself against Thy attacks. I raised fortifications about the wretched place, adding every day to the number of my iniquities to prevent Thee taking it. When there was an appearance of Thy becoming victorious over this ungrateful heart, I raised a counter battery and threw up ramparts to keep off Thy goodness and to hinder the course of Thy grace. None other could have conquered than Thyself. I cannot bear to hear it said, we are not free to resist grace. I have had too long and fatal an experience of my liberty. I closed up the avenues of my heart, that I might not so much as hear that secret voice of God, which was calling me to Himself. I have indeed, from tenderest youth, passed through a series of grievances, either by maladies or by persecutions. The girl to whose care my mother left me in arranging my hair used to beat me, and did not make me turn it except with rage and blows. Everything seemed to punish me, but this, instead of making me turn unto Thee, O my God, only served to afflict and embitter my mind. My father knew nothing of all this. His love to me was such that he would not have suffered it. I loved him very much, but at the same time I feared him, so that I told him nothing of it. My mother was often teasing him with complaints of me, to which he made no other reply than, there are 12 hours in the day, she will grow wiser. This rigorous proceeding was not the worst for my soul, though it soured my temper, which was otherwise mild and easy. But what caused my greatest hurt was that I chose to be among those who caressed me, in order to corrupt and spoil me. My father, seeing I was now grown tall, placed me Lent among the Ursulines, to receive my first communion at Easter, at which time I was to complete my 11th year. And here my most dear sister, under whose inspection my father placed me, redoubled her cares to cause me to make the best preparation possible for this act of devotion. I thought not of giving myself to God in good earnest. I often felt a combat between my good inclinations and my bad habits. I even did some penances. As I was almost always with my sister, and as the boarders in her class, which was the first, were very reasonable and civil, I became such also while among them. It has been cruel to educate me badly, for my very nature was strongly disposed to goodness. Easily won with mildness, I did with pleasure whatever my good sister desired. At length Easter arrived. I received the communion with much joy and devotion. In this house I stayed until Guyon died. But as my other sister was the mistress of the second class, she demanded that in her week I should be with her in that class. Her manners, so opposite to the others, made me relax my former piety. I felt no more than new and delightful ardor, which had seized my heart at my first communion. Alas, it held but a short time. My faults and failings were soon reiterated, and drew me from the care and duties of religion. As I now grew very tall for my age, and more to my mother's liking than before, she took care to deck and dress me, to make me see company, to take me abroad. She took an inordinate pride in that beauty with which God had formed me, to bless and praise Him. However, it was perverted by me into a source of pride and vanity. Several suitors came to me, but as I was not yet 12 years, my father would not listen to any proposals. I loved reading, and shut myself up alone every day to read without interruption. What proved effectual to gain me entirely to God, at least for a time, was that a nephew of my father's passed by our home on a mission to Cochin, China. I happened at that time to be taking a walk with my companions, which I seldom did. At my return she was gone. They gave me an account of this sanctity and the things she had said. I was so touched that I was overcome with sorrow. I cried all the rest of the day and night. Early in the morning I went in great distress to seek my confessor. I said to him, "What, my father, am I the only person in our family to be lost? Alas, help me in my salvation." He was greatly surprised to see me so much afflicted, and comforted me in the best manner he could, not thinking me so bad as I was. In my backslidings I was docile, punctual in obedience, careful to confess often. Since I went to him, my life was more regular. O thou God of love, How often hast thou knocked at the door of my heart? How often terrified me with appearances of sudden death? All this only made a transient impression. I presently returned again to my infidelities. This time thou didst take and quite carry off my heart. Alas, what grief I now sustain for having displeased thee! What regrets! What exclamations! What sobbings! Who would have thought to see me but that my conversion would have lasted as long as my life? Why didst thou not, O my God, utterly take this heart to thyself, when I gave it to thee so fully? Or, if thou didst take it, then, oh, why didst thou let it revolt again? Thou wast surely strong enough to hold it, but thou wouldst perhaps, in leaving me to myself, display thy mercy, that the depth of my iniquity might serve as a trophy to thy goodness. I immediately applied myself to every part of my duty. I made a general confession with great compunction of heart. I frankly confessed all that I knew with many tears. I became so changed that I was scarcely known. I would not forever so much have made the least voluntary slip. They found not any matter for absolution when I confessed. I discovered the very smallest faults, and God did me the favor to enable me to conquer myself in many things. There were left only some remains of passion, which gave me some trouble to conquer. But as soon as I had, by means thereof, given any displeasure, even to the domestics, I begged their pardon, in order to subdue my wrath and pride. For wrath is the daughter of pride. A person truly humble permits not anything to put him in a rage. As it is pride which dies the last in the soul, so it is passion which is last destroyed in the outward conduct. A soul thoroughly dead to itself finds nothing of rage left. There are persons who, being very much filled with grace and with peace at the entrance of the resigned path of light and love, think they are come thus far, but they are greatly mistaken in this view of their state. This they will readily discover if they are heartily willing to examine two things. First, if their nature is lively, warm, and violent, I speak not of stupid tempers, they will find from time to time that they make slips in which trouble and emotion have some share. Even then they are useful to humble and annihilate them. But when annihilation is perfected, all passion is gone. It is incompatible with this state. They will find that there often arises in them certain motions of anger, but the sweetness of grace holds them back. They would easily transgress if in any wise they gave way to these motions. There are persons who think themselves very mild, because nothing thwarts them. It is not of such that I am speaking. Mildness, which has never been put to the proof, is often only counterfeit. Those persons who, when unmolested, appear to be saints, are no sooner exercised by vexing occurrences than there starts up in them a strange number of faults. They have thought them dead, which only lay dormant because nothing awakened them. I followed my religious exercise. I shut myself up all day to read and pray. I gave all I had to the poor, taking even linen to their houses. I taught them the catechism, and when my parents dined out, I made them eat with me and served them with great respect. I read the works of Saint Francis de Sales and the life of Madame de Chantal. There I first learned what mental prayer was, and I besought my confessor to teach me that kind of prayer. As he did not, I used my own endeavors to practice it, though without success. As I then thought, because I could not exercise the imagination, I persuaded myself that that prayer could not be made without forming to oneself certain ideas and reasoning much. This difficulty gave me no small trouble for a long time. I was very assiduous and prayed earnestly to God to give me the gift of prayer. All that I saw in the life of Madame de Chantal charmed me. I was so much a child that I thought I ought to do everything I saw in it. All the vows she had made, I made also. One day, as I was reading that she had put the name of Jesus on her heart to follow the counsel, set me as a seal upon thy heart. For this purpose she had taken a hot iron, whereupon the holy name was engraven. I was very much afflicted that I could not do the same. I decided to write that sacred and adorable name in large characters on paper. Then with ribbons and a needle I fastened it to my skin in 4 places. In that position it continued a long time. After this I turned all my thoughts to become a nun, because the love which I had for Saint Francis de Sales did not permit me to think of any other community than the one of which he was the founder. I frequently went to beg the nuns there to receive me into their convent. Often I stole out of my father's house to go and repeatedly solicit my admission there. Though it was what they eagerly desired, even as a temporal advantage, yet they never dared let me enter, as they very much feared my father, to whose fondness for me they were no strangers. There was at that house a niece of my father's, to whom I am under great obligations. Fortune had not been very favorable to her father. It had reduced her in some measure to depend on mine, to whom she made known my desire. Although she would not for anything in the world have hindered a right vocation, yet she could not hear of my design without shedding tears. As she happened at this time to be abroad, my cousin went to my confessor to desire him to forbid my going to the visitation. He dared not, however, do it plainly, for fear of drawing on himself the resentment of that community. I still wanted to be a nun, and importuned my mother excessively to take me to that house. She would not do it, for fear of grieving my father, who was absent. End of chapter 4 of volume 1.